Let's bring in our guest from the U.S. to get more perspective to this particular development. He's a global affairs analyst, Ibidolapo Ajayi. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
To just now hear that, the former president, Barack Obama, who is a well-respected figure in the Democratic Party, as well as the former Speaker, Pelosi, are also now, speaking to each other and concerned as well. How serious is this now for President Biden? Is this now a make or break moment?
Indeed it is, because after the NATO conference yesterday and had this press conference, like you referred to earlier, the expectation was that that conference will help to quell the growing tide of Democrats that are asking that he step aside. But rather, it got mixed reactions. There were those that felt he was very strong on his communication with respect to foreign affairs, which is one of his strongest points. It has always been his strongest point, foreign affairs. But the gaps clearly show that the president is still struggling to communicate. And this has also continued to raise worries and continue to see increased shouts from the Democrats that he should step aside. And I personally feel like this is probably something that he will have to come to terms with in the next coming weeks, because the Democratic National Convention is approaching, and there will have to be a decision on whether he's going to stand for the nomination at the convention, or there will be possibly an open convention where they find a new candidate.
And I want to get to that process of finding a new candidate in just a moment. But I also wanted to ask, because this is not unprecedented, we've had presidents who have had to go through this and eventually won the election. For example, if you remember Jimmy Carter in 1980, there were calls for him to also step aside. He was incumbent at that time. He eventually went on to win that election. Quite frankly, not for the same reason as President Joe Biden, which is cognitive. But are there chances that, look, he could wait through this and also win this election?
There are possibilities that Joe Biden could still wait through it and win. The challenge is the opportunities are getting narrower, because, as you know, with the elections in the United States are often decided by swing states, and that's where the battle will be won. The path is getting increasingly wider for Donald Trump and getting narrower for President Biden. For example, if you were just to lose Pennsylvania, it's over. So and that's looking likely, going by the current polls. Of course, the polls are there to be disputed, and they will say, they're probably not real. And that's one of the things he's been holding on to, that he needs perhaps a polls to show that he will lose against Trump. Right now, some polls are showing that they are still tied after their debate. Some are showing that Trump is a few points ahead. But what's worrying for the Democrats is that because he's the head of the ticket, the down ballot could potentially suffer if Biden is not really himself going into the elections, and that would cost them the House and the opportunity to win the House and possibly the Senate. So they are worried, and that's a real worry for them, and that's why this pressure is mounting now for him to step aside, especially since he had said at the last time around that he contested that he wants to be the bridge between the generations. Wants to be a generational president. So now the calls are getting louder that perhaps it is the time for him to be good with that promise and step aside. And we don't see it quelling or just calming down anytime soon.
The process to replace him is not as easy politically as Democrats make it seem. It is a very complicated process, because you have to find a candidate that has risen to national stature. You also have to find a candidate you've mentioned delegates earlier, in a very short period of time, who have the ability to speak to delegates, whether at in Utah, or Alabama, or Maine, and to now become the candidate of the party. What time, what are Democrats are racing against here?
It's a very precarious situation for them, because typically one would think that the mantle, should President Biden step down and step aside, will automatically go to Vice President Kamala Harris. But there are those in the party that feel like there might be better candidates than her. Like the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, for example. And that now throws the party into a situation whereby they have to go into that convention trying to convince, of course, Joe Biden has to release his delegates, and then they have to now open it up for these potential candidates to now try to win those candidates over. so they can win the nomination. Now, it's not impossible, but it's a very, very tough task. Right now, they're caught in a real tough situation that they have to, firstly, either accept that Joe Biden is going to be the candidate, or come sunshine, or they make a decision very quickly. And I think that probably will come in the next week. Perhaps my suspicion is that they might want to wait for the Republican convention to be over and then not give Donald Trump an opportunity to use that against them. So they might wait to then come to the conclusion that either Biden is going to stay the candidate or is going to step down. And that will now, open up a whole new Pandora's box for the Democrats, because now they have to come up with that candidate that will be nationally accepted and that Biden himself can throw his support behind to have an opportunity to win.
The Democrats definitely do have a very tough decision to make ahead. Thank you so much for your time. Great to have you on as always. Global Affairs Analyst Ibidolapo Ajayi.
Thank you for having me.